Chapter 538. Upon hearing the voice tinged with amusement, Ydir turned his head to find Kishir, whose hair tips were slightly damp, approaching to stand beside him in front of the painting. The attendant had discreetly disappeared from view. Were you looking at this? It's been a while. I heard it was painted just before you left for Paleta. That's right. I had it done because there were many saying I might never return from there. You could say it was something like a portrait meant to be left behind after one's death. Kishir casually revealed the grim backstory of the painting. However, his expression while looking at it was neither dark nor seemed displeased. Ydir stared briefly at the face in the portrait, its gentle contours and transient aura entirely gone, replaced by a secretive and lax smile before responding. In that case, it's become the most useless painting in the world. You're still here, after all. True. Kishir's eyes twinkled as if Ydir's words were the exact answer he'd been expecting. It seemed the painting still being stored here was more a memento of its original purpose being rendered meaningless. But since you have shown such interest in it, it doesn't seem quite entirely useless. Do you like the painting? It's not so much that I like the painting, but I was curious as I have never seen a portrait of you before. So, you were really curious about my younger days? Kishir read Ydir's intentions with remarkable accuracy, his face brimming with enthusiasm. So, what's your impression? Impression? Ydir couldn't say he'd been contemplating either the fate of the seemingly pointless painting from his previous life or the trials of the young duke in the portrait must have faced after heading for Paleta. In the end, there was only one thing he could say. I was thinking you were handsome from that time on. Kishir's eyes sparkled. Is that all you have to say? It's a bit embarrassing to say it myself, but back then, people would often say I was more like an angel than a human, and that even the air where my breath brushed by was mythically beautiful. He didn't look embarrassed at all. The content of his words were even less so. It seems you're already well aware, so what more do you wish to hear? I may be tired of knowing how handsome I am, but special compliments from special person are always something one wishes to hear more of. If anyone other than Kishir had brazenly made such skin-crawling comments, they might have instantly turned to dust under Ydir's hand. But this was Kishir. His self-praise about his appearance was convincing enough to make anyone accept it. So, all Ydir could do was let out a short sigh. Fine, you were, are, and likely will forever continue to be incredibly handsome. Kishir burst into laughter. Fortunately, he seemed satisfied with that much and didn't press Ydir any further about the beauty of his younger self. Then it's time to infuse you with some divine power. There is a chair over there. Please have a seat. Pardon? If we'd shared the same bathroom, I could have done it while we bathed. Since we didn't, this is the only option. Now, come on. So that's why he followed me into the bathroom. Unlike before, Ydir felt considerably less pain when his body became stained with the energy from the red stone, which now seemed to seep between his veins rather than just his skin. The same was true when he was healed with divine power. Although the rate of disappearance of the blemishes didn't speed up as it had before, the absence of pain alone was an incomparable advantage. Since his body would gradually recover if he rested, he figured it was okay not to receive divine power. Kishir, however, appeared to have never intended to leave things to be from the start. Seeing no signs of Kishir retreating, Ydir eventually opened the flap of his robe in front of the man. Kishir said nothing for a moment, looking at the faintly moving crimson veins that still marred on Ydir's shoulders and various spots on his chest. ... Finally, Kishir began a familiar ritual in silence, taking out holy water, a sanctified symbol, and a purification stone. Each time the white light of the divine power touched his body, Ydir felt a surge of vitality in his very flesh and a cooling sensation in the heated areas. Even though Kishir knew his divine power no longer had the potent healing effects it once did, he continued to generously channel his power. Then he suddenly spoke. Ydir, when do you plan to examine His Majesty again? The sooner, the better. If possible, I would like to examine him again tomorrow. Depending on His Majesty's health condition, it should be possible. It's not bad for me either, as I also want to test my strength as soon as possible. However, there is one thing we need to confirm beforehand. What is it? I couldn't properly see the red light you mentioned earlier when His Majesty's internal condition was open. Pardon? Caught off guard by the unexpected comment, Ydir hesitated for a moment. Despite noticing Ydir's slight flinch, Kishir continued to channel his divine power without faltering. It's natural that I might not have seen as much as you did, since you were closer to the source of the energy. However, even His Majesty and Yuliver, who were even closer, did not see that light. Don't you think that's worth considering? My current hypothesis is that perhaps you were the only one who could see that energy. What do you think? Ydir was perplexed. He had seen that red light, albeit briefly, but it hadn't been a fleeting as to be mistaken as an illusion. Could it be true that no one else had seen that vivid light? I naturally assumed that others would have seen it to some extent, since I had seen it twice and was quite certain. If they simply missed it because it had passed too quickly, then that was fortunate. However, if only Ydir could see that energy, then it could cause problems when re-examining the Emperor, especially for Kishir, who needed to see the target to focus his energy. If that is indeed the case, then I agree that we should definitely confirm it before we examine His Majesty again, Ydir said. Good. Do you have any ideas as to the cause? Ydir thought for a moment before responding. If the reason lies with me, then the most likely explanation could be my eye. Ydir looked directly into Kishir's red eyes and saw his own reflection. Currently, his eyes were no different from usual, as he was not using any abilities. However, when he used his powers, one of the Ydir's eyes turned golden. This unique phenomenon had been described by Anon as the Eye of Magic. When the Eye of Magic opens, one becomes sensitive to phenomena caused by magic power and other energies, seeing things one couldn't see before, or so they say. Ever since that moment, Ydir had found it much more comfortable to peer into someone's inner self compared to before. He had grown accustomed to this newfound ease, and given that he didn't feel any significant changes in himself, he hadn't thought much of it. However, if he considered today's incident as an instance of seeing things he couldn't see before, then this mysterious event made some sense. Hearing Ydir's speculation, Kishir also nodded his head softly in agreement. My thoughts exactly. If I'm the only one who can see that energy, things will get difficult. How can we gather strength if Commander can't see it? In fact, I have been thinking about a solution to that while taking a bath earlier. Would you like to hear it? The divine power flowing from Kishir's hand finally ceased. Confirming that the crimson vein had settled and almost returned to its original size, the man opened his mouth as he draped a garment over Ydir's bare shoulder. The source of the magic flowing in your eyes originated from me, and we are also connected through a somewhat mysterious force. Yes? The man, who started with cryptic words, studied Ydir's reaction and continued. So, if we intentionally activate that connection while attempting something, perhaps I can clearly know what you are seeing and chasing from my end. I had that thought. Is that even possible? Ydir didn't know much about magic, making it difficult to firmly assert anything. However, he did feel that it wouldn't be as easy as it sounded. Intentional activation. Is that even possible? What if it puts you at risk? Have you forgotten? We have already activated our connection once before through our own will. Considering that, this method might be the most tried and true. At those words, Yudhir immediately recalled the slender threads of light he had seen overlaying Kishir earlier today. That dreamlike and mysterious sensation still lingered somewhere within him. And I believe the awakener's power I possess could also help in activating this connection, Kishir added.